completely agree with what you mentioned about the roping turn from Bozzzton being the biggest difference maker, right? Because we can argue back and forth as to whether Bozzzton was maybe hoping for some better outs off of Renew in terms of long game, but the only objective blunder was not finishing the Elucia turn, which means like you do have to realize that if you are playing Elucia, you have to allot a certain amount of time for what comes after the hands are swapped, because there can be a lot of actions to perform if there is that expendable performers. We do move on now to the Warlock matchup that you were talking about though, and this one is all about Ticketus, and I think Bozzzton kept that Mutinous, and I really like where his head's at because eating Ticketus is one way to win the matchup for sure.
Yeah, I'm quickly deciding any card with the name Us at the end is an unfun one. So we'll see if that theme continues throughout the year. But yeah, there is a Mutinous in hand for Bozzzton, and it's pretty straightforward to use in this matchup, right? Because you can just know when Ticketus will be corrupted there, and then just play after that, I guess, is the plan. So it's not one of those matchups where you have to try and pinpoint something or work out if there are even minions in the hand in general. It is just going to be, if Ticketus could have been corrupted, Bozzzton probably just plays it.
And while that is like a very strong game plan in this matchup, it's nowhere near guaranteed from working, because even if you do know when Ticketus is in hand, there's very likely just other minions that the Mutinous might miss on.
Right.
So like that Bozzzton is going for game plan B of just taking Nosdarmu off of the Draconic Studies, because with second studies, it's playable on turn 5. Like, Ticketus is a 6 mana 8/8. What about a 5 mana 8/8?
And also as well, like, even if Ticketus gets eaten, well, Jiraxxus still exists, right? Like, an early Jiraxxus against Priest can be still good enough to win the game and so on. So it's not like if Ticketus goes away, then Jarla just loses the game.
You have the Battle of the Scorpids at the beginning, though. I don't think Jarla would want to just play his other Scorpid into this, because he does have a rather clean Soul Shear and Armor Vendor turn. I wonder if it's to the point where he's just not going to play Armor Vendors, though, because he wants to keep his hand as diluted as possible for when Ticketus enters the hand, and so Mutinous has less chance of eating it. I do think it's a bit ambitious at this point, because Jarla also just needs some hand space to tap towards the Ticketus, but yeah, he's just holding on to everything that he doesn't need on board. Reading for Bozzzton, not the best discounts, but hoping to pick up something like another Studies ideally, or something proactive, and importantly corrupts the Insight.
And what's it going to be? Okay, well, nothing super impactful, but, you know, 1 mana 3/4, you'll take it.
Another Cascading seems pretty powerful.
Yep. Priest, ever good at just creating a ton of big minions. He knows there's 2 Draconic Studies, right? So you may as well just take the big guaranteed removal tools.
Okay. Jarla going for the armor now, because I do think he has to start tapping in the near future, because he has to hit Ticketus in the first place to have that game plan online.
Or maybe that's his plan. What if I just don't draw it, then he can't eat it, right? That works, doesn't it? That is the kind of logic I would apply and then wonder why I started to lose Priest matchups.
Is that Vince McMahon meme entering my mind again? I remember when you and Sottle talked about it. Well, the Militia a bit early is also a way to sometimes pull the rug out from under Priest. Like, yes, Bozzzton is running Soul Mirror, but I don't think he would keep it in that matchup necessarily.
Right. It is a bit of a throwback to the older matchups of Priest versus Warlock, right? Where, like, the only answer Priest often had was exactly a Soul Mirror against Militia. Otherwise, Militia would kind of run away with it. So, a bit of a throwback.
Yeah, back against the old Soul Demon Hunter. I kind of missed that deck. Lapidary with Marrow Slicer was just one of the best feelings.
There were simpler times, honestly, where you could just go face. Like, I've already been shouted at today by the other casters because I've just been jamming just old Face Hunter on ladder and destroying everyone. I miss the good old days.
I was a little bit tempted by the Unstable Shadow or Fell Blast there from Jarla just to be able to retain his Scorpid, but I think he's saying, why retain the Scorpid when I can revive it and one other minion from the Raised Dead instead, which kind of feeds into both the value game plan and having minions in hand that aren't Ticketus, that might be eaten by the Mutinous.
And already we see Jarla in a strange position. I'm not even going to say it's a bad position, but floating 2 mana and not tapping because he's on 9 cards. He does have some very powerful turns coming up, Coin Militia, for example, but it's just one of those weird turns you never want to be in as Warlock, where you don't get to draw.
I do think it's smart for him to hold on to... Sorry, not tap there because he really doesn't want to draw any fragments. There's currently only 2 in the deck, but I think Militia for 2 in this matchup is oddly similar to Militia for full board, right? The things that answer the 2 is very similar to what answers the full board, like Double Condemn or the Soul Mirror, for example. It's just Hysteria where things start to get a little bit scary, but then Jarla very likely just has other minions aside from those 3/3s.
Oh, Bozzzton
and the Scorpid is...
Oh, what was that?
I mean, it's the Scorpid soloing the matchup.
Don't get me wrong, it makes sense. It's just a weird turn of just saying, oh yeah, I'll just 6 mana pass when I have 18 million minions in hand that are huge, and it's like, yep, Scorpid just wins.
I mean, it's fine. He's under 2 damage pressure per turn. Priest is not going to crumble under that whatsoever. Bozzzton just saying, you know, if Jarla goes wider and he has to be the one to first play a card here because he's going to overdraw. If not, then Bozzzton can possibly get a better Soul Mirror. And if, if Bozzzton's in worst case scenario, he can also just play Runway Blackwing for the 50-50 to snipe the Scorpid next turn. I think it's really smart.
I'm also weirdly scared that Jarla's just going to, like, play Armor Vendor and pass this turn. It's something Jarla would do.
Well, I got news for you, Raven. I think it's pretty strong here. Like, if Bozzzton didn't do anything last turn, why should Jarla give him things to do? Right, and that meaning Militia.
Oh, no. This it's giving me nightmares of when people thought the way to play Token Druid Mirrors was to just not play the game. Again, though, I just want to reiterate, I think both players are kind of correct in this one instance, but it still terrifies me that, like, the correct plays are to just do nothing.
It doesn't terrify me so much as irk me that the correct plays do nothing, but they take 50 seconds to do nothing. No, I mean, obviously, this is a very high-stakes match, right? This is potentially a ticket to Worlds for Jarla. I think it means even more to most of the field because he got so close last year and fell just a little bit short at that last hurdle. So he'll be making sure to not make any errors where we've already seen both these players fall victim to the rope earlier on in the series.
Yeah, and honestly, with Bunny Hopper being unfortunately relegated this season, I think these 2 players are quite easily our 2 slowest players we have in Grandmasters now.
Raven, you have to thank this one maker for giving Bozzzton something to do, right? Because he picked up Focus Will, then he could get the Mage Scribe down safely where the Scorpid doesn't just one-shot it.
Yeah, we had a brief reprieve, but now the game is back on again. We took a small break, but we were allowed to play cards once more.
Are we, though? Okay, I mean, School Spirits looks pretty good this turn for Jarla, so he can get the Militia up to 4 fragments for next turn.
Yeah, even, honestly, this turn, even if it's just double trade and cascade in the 4/9, seems fine, even if he doesn't want to do anything or commit anything else. I just don't think you can really be happy about leaving the Mage Scribe just on the board to attack next turn.
I think he can get away with it, but my issue with the cascading for no corrupt value is that's one less card in the Yasharj pool, which is pretty relevant in this matchup, I think, especially since you do expect some of your resources to be deleted by a Mutinous here, even if it's not necessarily Ticketus. If you lose out on a Strongman or Yasharj itself, that can really hurt Jarla's long-term game plan. So it looks like he's actually just going Militia here, which leads me to think that it's coin Jaraxxus next turn.
Yeah, getting early safe Jaraxxus is absolutely huge. I do wonder now whether Bozzdton's just going to release the Murloc. Because it's difficult, right? With hand disruption, you need to learn the correct timings, or at least your best chance. And after seeing a 7-drop get played, and your opponent's hand is pretty much full, I think he has to play it. And if he doesn't play it now, it shouldn't be in the deck. We can't see, of course, that it's not going to hit Ticketus because it's not in hand. Does still become a 10-10, gobbled up one of those strongmen. And now that minion basically just didn't exist in this game of Hearthstone is how it works.
Still very powerful. I completely agree with what you had as the read from Bozzzton there, or at least his mindset, right? Because it's not as though that Militia was particularly powerful. It only summoned 2 3/3s, and he had to trade the entire board basically to deal with that one Mage Scribe. So I think Bozzzton was maybe smelling something a bit fishy. Turns out it was just the Murloc itself and not the Ticketus in hand. But he still gets himself a very powerful board position. And from this point onward, because he's not really going for trying to beat out Ticketus, he can morph into just strong curve game plan. He's got these giant dragons and a Sethic train in the near future. And that 10-10, I think, is very much disincentivizing Jarla from just coining out Jaraxxus here. This does look like it has to be a cascading turn instead.
Oh, I disagree. I think this is just 100% Jaraxxus, right? He can just trade into the 2-1, go Jaraxxus, he gains a ton of armor, which soaks the attack from the 10-10, and then he just has, like, everything to do next turn.
Oh, I think a couple issues with that game plan is sometimes there's going to be more than just 3 minions left on board. Sorry, 2, because he only had the 1 corrupt on the cascading if he just goes Jaraxxus, so it's not necessarily guaranteed he could deal with the Mutinous. And also maybe Jarla's still looking to draw a couple more cards before he goes Jaraxxus, right? Because he really wants Ticketus sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Jaraxxus would have corrupted it to 3, right?
Oh, true.
Playing it, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the way I play. I just want to be complete aggro all the time. Does just rip the Ticketus off the top though, so definitely not too shabby here.
Yeah, I think that is the go signal to go Jaraxxus, because the way that Warlock can sometimes lose this matchup is, say, Ticketus bottom 5 cards, and then Priest has just drawn to less than 5 cards left by that point, and the Ticketus is not actually putting them deeper in fatigue. Whereas now, Jarla has guaranteed knowledge that it's in hand, he's seen Mutinous, and so he is going to be able to get that Ticketus value. It's just an awkward turn because the Runway Blackwing is not dying this turn, and I don't think Jarla is meant to play Strongman because it would die to the Runway Blackwing.
It would potentially save him 9 health though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jarla's now just working out whether he feels that's worthwhile or not. Or whether he wants to try and kill it next turn and play it with the Ticketus.
I definitely like that plan a little bit better. I think at 36, Jarla's fine to take another 9 here, even if the Runway Blackwing gets buffed a little bit more. At worst, he has Ysera with the strong... Sorry, Hysteria with the Strongman.
Let's back over to Bozzzton now.
After having seen a cascading, I'd be very tempted to just drop another big dragon here and just say, make it as hard as possible for Jarla to have the leeway to play Ticketus and get away with it, right? Which means big threat on board. If Jarla's forced to spend 6 mana on not immediately disrupting the board, then Bozzzton can maybe get the damage to offset the fatigue he has to get through.
I think the other option here is Sethic spells on this 9-4, because what you could be worried about is if he plays another big dragon, then exactly Hysteria Ticketus would be disgusting, right? So he can actually just play Sethic, buff the 1 dragon so Hysteria doesn't matter, and still gain a load of additional spells.
Very true. 1 huge minion, tough for Hysteria to get through. No Siphon Soul in hand for Jarla just yet, but he is running 2 copies, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Problem solved.
Doesn't mean you can't play Ticketus, though. So question number 1 is, can he do anything else?
Well, he can coin the Ticketus, but it leaves a Sethek on board, which is obviously a bit scary as well, and doesn't get to fit in the hero power.
Can he... Wait, what does Ticketus Hysteria look like here? Is that ever good enough?
13. It doesn't kill the Blackwing, but Ticketus Strongman Hysteria does, but that feels like a little bit too many resources used. I honestly feel like he might be fine to just wait a little bit longer, but then obviously every turn you hold the Ticketus in hand, you're a little bit scared of, say, Elucia.
Right. I mean, Coin Siphon as a worst case scenario is not that bad, right? He can just get rid of this 14-15 and say, okay, you can have Sethek for one turn, and then I'll deal with it.
I keep forgetting that the Elucia would then just burn cards from Bozzzton's deck still, if Bozzzton played it, because he would swap to...
Right.
Yeah, you get how it works.
Yeah, he would be burning cards because he gives his opponent his deck, right? So
in the end, Jarla decides to leave up the Sethek, which is a little bit scary, I have to say, but he does get a lot of tempo from putting the 8/8 on board and getting rid of that giant dragon.
Foreign player could help out here, just to kill off this Ticketus if he's feeling afraid. Just have Shadow Word Rune as well for 3 mana, which would be 2 mana, right? Which doesn't seem too bad.
I might be tunnel visioning a bit on what I saw in APAC just a while ago, but I'd be very tempted to Soul Mirror the Ticketus just to get it in the Raise Dead pool. Again, Bozzzton doesn't even have Raise Dead in hand right now, and there's a lot more minions that could mess with it, but it feels like he might be in that bad of a spot where he needs his own Ticketus to really win in the Fatigue War.
Quickly.
I think Bozzzton will only be in a really bad spot if there's like exactly Yasharaj coming up next, right? I think if there's a big gap between Ticketus and Yasharaj, you're probably feeling okay for now as Bozzzton.
But the for now doesn't matter in the long run necessarily, right? Because as long as Jarla doesn't die in the for now, then Bozzzton will eventually die to fatigue first.
Oh yeah, sure. I just think like with what he has available here, like Bozzzton has an answer to, for example, even the second militia with the Soul Mirror. He is, I guess now with this 8/8 being gone, he is running a little bit short on actual threats. Is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, very true. I don't think he can get there on value alone, especially with the Sethek not really having that many good ways to proc it last turn outside of Apotheosis. So Militia can get the full clear here. Trading the 8/8 instead, which means that Jarla can retain more of the 3/3s. There's currently 4 fragments in the deck, 6 with the Spirit Jailer played. I kind of thought that he would just settle for the 4 so he could fit in the hero power, but he can actually still do that with 1 trade away, so it's nicely optimized here for Jarla.
Well, Bozzzton going to be thankful that he kept all this Soul Mirror.
I'm still worried about his overall game plan. Like, he could technically still have dealt with this with, like, Samuro Apo and then Holy Smite or Devouring Plague after. But I'm just not seeing how he can outpace just the hero power every turn from Jarla from this point.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, obviously Bozzzton isn't just going to quit the game right now, but he does need to piece together some kind of game plan. He's actually going to go for Apotheosis to clear for now and save that Soul Mirror. Probably going to plan on saving Soul Mirror for... What, is this how deep we're going here? He waits for the Yasharaj turn and then does Soul Mirror and then goes for, like, Raise Dead even with a pool that big.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's more just kind of settling now for knowing that it's really hard to get specifically Ticketus, but he just doesn't want to use Soul Mirror because he'll have all those 3/3s in the Raise Dead pool, whereas, you know, he still has this outside chance of resurrecting more impactful minions like Onyx Mage Scribe, etc. As for Jarla, just button every turn is baseline. The Samuro is pushing another 3, which is a bit scary to be fair, because Jarla doesn't have unlimited healing by this point. But because there's not a convenient way to get rid of the Samuro this turn, I think just hero power and maybe armor vendor is just fine. Malygos at any point can be used as an emergency healing switch for the amount of soul fragments in deck. There's 6 currently. The nice way the fragments works is that if you get them, they won't actually overdraw you anything if they get burned.
Yeah, and I actually, even though he could have left it till a little bit later, I actually like Jarla just thinning his deck here, because at this point he just wants to get to Yasharaj as quickly as possible, right? He just wants to get there quick so he can then just burn even the rest of Bozzzton's deck away.
Yeah, as it stands, Bozzzton only has like 4 more turns to draw before the second Ticketus doesn't get full value. And so I do agree with your reasoning there. Bozzzton doesn't look like a particularly good Elucia, but there's just nothing proactive to be done with his hand. Could see Soul Mirror just to be able to push another 3 damage. Or even just Shadow Word Ruin on the 1 minion, but I think he's earmarked the Ruin for the Yasharaj turn.
Right.
Probably has to choose between whether it's Soul Mirror or Ruin that he saves for the Yasharaj turn, right?
Yeah, to the extent where I'm either thinking Hysteria, or like, what if he just says Elucia and then use your spells for removal this turn? I don't know. It's kind of weird.
That's true. Okay. I think that's the guaranteed outcome off of Hysteria, unless like both the first attacks of the Malygos hit the 6/6, which is pretty unlikely. School Spirits to dump a card, you'd have to assume for Jarla here. Like,
yeah, I mean, he could go Armor Vendor if he wants to save the School Spirits, right?
there's 7 fragments in Jarla's deck, so actually only 7 real cards, and he really wants the Discharge in particular off of what's remaining. Nothing to be done against the repeated hero power value from Jarla. I don't think Bozzzton can get there with just this. He is waiting for his own Raised Dead to enter the hand to maybe give him some more generation possibilities if he gets exactly Mage Cry. But at this point, the Raised Dead pool is so diluted that he's far from guaranteed of getting anything impactful.
Yeah, it's kind of just a mess, isn't it? And again, yeah, okay, Bozzzton is just going to go for the my hand sucks, let's see what your hand looks like. And at least now he can use some of this removal to help him survive that a little bit longer.
Yep. Jarla going for the old note-taking while he gets this window to glimpse into Bozzzton's hand. I think Bozzzton would end up on dumping a Cascading here. While it's not fully corrupted and goes away from Jarla's own Discharge pool because it's Bozzzton who played it. But then again, you can just get more cards played if he goes for all the 2 costs played.
And also the double drain soul is a reasonable amount of healing, right? So, oh, there's Raised Dead.
And so Jarla can give Bozzzton like his own minions in the Raised Dead pool, which I feel like should be worse on average unless it's exactly Ticketus. Maybe that's the one way he loses, right? So he doesn't play the Raised Dead.
Yeah, I think if I was Jarla, I would prefer Bozzzton to use this Raised Dead.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that good in Bozzzton's pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in your pool, even like like the average outcome, I guess, is like a 6/6 or something from Jarla because of these demons he's summoned, right? He's summoning the Infernals every turn. But in general, like, this could go horribly wrong.
Yeah. I mean, It could get 3/3s as well off of the Militia, but I agree. If it gets the very, very unlikely outcome of Ticketus, then Jarla might have just dug his own grave.
Oh, wait, no, Ticketus would be the nuts right now, right? Because he could just play it.
Well, he would be burning his own deck. Because that's, like, Bozzzton is on the Warlock right now.
Oh, sure. I'd still probably win.
Yeah, in the end, doesn't play the Raised Dead. Nice, fun little discussion we had there, which is always confusing when Illucia comes into play. But now it's going to be Bozzzton to see what's in his own pool. And it feels like it has to be something like that. He can go for Hysteria afterward when the Grandmasters has generated 2 2/2s.
I must consider.
I guess you play one more spell then for the full clear. I don't know. I just think Bozzzton's only avenue to victory, if there is any, is to see what's in this Raised Dead.
Yeah, most likely, right? Like, Naralax doesn't really gain him anything.
Mutinous can eat your charge, maybe?
Well, he knows it's not in the hand for now, so it's going to be a bit of a pass.
But at this point for Jarla, at any point he draws it, I'm pretty sure he just windmill slams it. So I don't think the Mutinous is going to have its time to shine, unfortunately.
Wow, it really has looked like this game has just been a slow, miserable death for Bozzzton, hasn't it, in this specific matchup. Of course, we know Warlock very, very, very strong against Priest, but it just looks like Bozzzton's just not really got anything done this game.
Yeah, nothing going if he doesn't have his own way to like cheat the Ticketus, either generated on his own side or the Mutinous to eat it. And the window for that closed very quickly when Jarla played the Ticketus relatively early. And there's just far too many minions in Bozzzton's Raised Dead pool to even have a hope of copying his own Ticketus. Again, for Jarla, only 8 real cards in the deck right now, I think. 7 of them being soul fragments.
Most importantly, though, he's got a 6/6 in his hero power.
Every single turn, Inferno, Inferno, Inferno. Even if, like, Bozzzton had generated, say, Ysera Awakens here, it's not enough on its own to deal with this board. We can see this Condemn, but that's, like, even more resources used. Renew can get out of this game. I can't think of any more outs, Raven. Tap out.
I wonder.
Raised Dead. I mean, there's just... The problem is Bozzzton's got to find a way that beats a 6/6 every turn. So that really relies on him not only clearing the board, but then putting on enough pressure to force Jarla back. The issue with that is in Jarla's hand, he has a reset switch, which also allows him to make a 6/6 on an empty board. So Bozzzton not only has to clear Jarla's board and put minions on for pressure, he has to do that, what, 3 times minimum? To even have a chance.
5 times to me, Raven.
Yeah, I'm saying a complete minimum 3 times to make Jarla have to use his brain, and then 4, 5, 6 times to actually win the game, which I think at this point is nigh on impossible.
Agreed. Okay, well, I do know from watching a lot of Europe that even though Jarla has like 99.99999% won the game, he's not just going to ship everything face hero power end turn. But wait, is it happening? Is he granting? Yes, thank you, Jarla.
I mean, why wouldn't he be shipping everything face hero power? And that's the only option he had.
No. I mean, I was gonna say and ending turn immediately, right? I thought he would take another 20 seconds minimum to think if there's anything he's missing. But he did the thing very quickly, and I am grateful.
I thought there was some hidden play there I didn't understand.
Well, Bozzzton does have to pull the switch on at least one of these AoEs because he is just dead on board if not.
Yeah, he's probably going for both, right? Condemn into Awakens to clear the board. Mostly.
That is Bozzzton.
Oh, sorry, just clear, yeah.
one of maybe 2.5 reset switches, whereas Jarla has the 5 we talked about. Initiation is funny, but like even if he copies a Ticketus, at this point, it's just too late, right? By the time Jarla plays Ticketus again, Bozzzton's entire deck will be deleted, and then even if Bozzzton somehow manages to have drawn Raised Dead by that point and plays his own Ticketus, he's too far into Fatigue to have any chance of racing Jarla that way. Nothing doing.
Be a really good hand against Warrior, though. Make sure they never play Rattlegore ever again.
Are you perhaps previewing our last game of the series by any chance?
Maybe. Maybe. Oh, I think Jarla could just Cascade in this turn and then just play Ogremancer or Hero Power and it'll be fine.
It would be fine. But this turn is less straightforward than last, so he might not take 2 seconds to think about it.
Yeah, or we could just do this, pay 2 mana. Yeah, seems fine. Pick your poison.
Corrupts the Cascading fully. Raised Dead for Bozzzton, but again, no Ticketus in his pool, so no chance of beating Jarla in Fatigue. And even though it's a slow and methodical march to victory for Jarla, like he's done this so many times, it's unreal to me. Like this one matchup takes the entire length of 2 APAC sets on average, I'm pretty sure. And for Jarla to have the mental fortitude and the stamina to do this pretty much every single series of Grandmaster, because he's bringing Warlock every single time, and that's not even including the games that they play off stream, is just jarring to me.
Yeah, he's just a machine, right? He just does this, and of course we've seen slip-ups from both players today, but in general, he also does these super long matches and doesn't really make mistakes outside of the very rare occasion, so it is very impressive. And there's a reason he's hit almost every, like, top 8, right? Nice little play there, honestly. Yeah, dream the Inferno back and then just gain a threat. So Bozzzton is doing what he can do here. But again, like, Bozzzton will know what Jarla has in his deck left over in terms of removal. And he should know that I don't even think the cards exist to beat just this hand. Never mind the Yasharaj.
You put it succinctly. Bozzzton is doing what he can, but what he can do is simply not enough. Jarla has far too much removal to outlast any amount of Raised Deads by this point. Let's say even if this Raised Dead from Bozzzton gets him 2 more Ticketers, or even 2 more Nosdormu, like big minions. Like, Jarla beats that. Jarla beats even this Renew, finding another Raised Dead.
Is he going to do the Venomous Scorpion Raised Dead cycle? Okay, there's Draconic Studies.
That's the one thing Jarla might not beat, right? Scorpion into Raised Dead into Scorpion into Raised Dead.
No, because Bozzzton will kill himself by the time it's a problem.
That's true. So I guess into Scorpion with 1 threat, and then that's the turn.
Yeah.
It's like half the Raised Dead is a Scorpion and the other half is something Jarla needs to actually respect. But that dream is lost. He can play Skeletal Dragon here and generate another Ysera maybe, but I still don't think that gets there.
I think it has to be Proto Drake, right? It's the thing most likely to leave something on the board after removal from Jarla.
But it's not playable this turn.
Yeah.
I do like just the Drake, get it played. He gets Ysera, maybe the Ysera Dream on the Infernal actually gets him ahead on board by that point. But we can already see this Corrupted Cascading Disaster and the second Nether and the 2 Hysterias. And Kaldara Drake is not the highest value dragon to generate. Although he can get 2 heals in per turn.
For 1 turn total. And then it will be dead.
Cascade button.
How shall I destroy you?
Jarla weighing up the benefits of this Ogremaster because, again, I think it's fair for him to expect a lot of the cards in hands are spells. So then just playing the Ogremaster out is just saying, well, this is a problem. Like, if you do this, then it actually generates potentially more damage than a 6/6. But in the end, Jarla just keeping it simple. Not playing more things than he has to, which is often his favorite thing to do.
Mm-hmm. I think if you played Ogremaster, it's mainly to corrupt that other Cascading Disaster. I forgot he even generated an additional one, so there's still just this third one that can get played. Bozzzton using Hysteria. He is inching closer and closer towards Fatigue. We are almost to the finish line, Raven, but before that, there's still a couple more boxes to open. This Palm Reading and this Renew, which might contain more Raised Deads, which might contain more Scorpids. Maybe.
Well, that hand kind of contains a lot of soul fragments right now. And Jarla's asking himself one question. Where's that?
There it is! There it is!
Gets to burn 2 cards. I love the way Bozzzton's shaking his head. Oh, bottom 4. Oh. It's like, well, it's about as low as it was ever going to get.
Say goodbye to the Enraged Mancrick. Bozzzton can immediately shuffle it into his deck and then draw it the next turn. That's pretty cute. But he's also just kind of dead.
When your opponent has
Very
the
dead.
old 33 health, not sure even an angry Mancrick's going to get this job done.
Just one Cthulhu away from lethal, right? If one Mancrick goes face.
And again, I like this from Jarla. You just see the restraint of, well, he could have played a 6/6 as well and really gone all in, but why? You just don't need to.
He can use that time to have a nice stretch instead because he knows he's won by this point. He's just gearing up for yet another Priest game, which Jarla absolutely signed up for with this type of lineup, right? It takes so much stamina. I can't even begin to overstate.
Also as well, to an extent, Jarla's opponents do this to themselves as well, because it is often the case, and Sol knows I complain about this sometimes, and only jokingly, but in a matchup like this, players choosing to just not queue Priest the first 3 times, just almost always just adds to the length of the series, whereas good old Blyze, he queues Priest first, and will continue to do so until he wins or he loses the match, and it is glorious.
Bless Blyze.
Yep. He knows what's up.
I should have signed up to do Saturday because that's when Blyze is playing.
Oh, yeah. You'll blink and the series will be over. It's great. Strongman. He's going to come down now. Jarla again choosing to just put on enough pressure. But it looks like Bozzzton finally tapped out, and maybe Bozzzton's plan is to just extend these games and make Jarla more tired as the time goes on and see if that'll affect his play in some respect.
If Bozzzton's plan is to make the casters more tired, he has absolutely accomplished it, at least for me. I don't know about you, Raven, but man, coming off of APAC and then doing this is kind of jarring. I did sign up for half a day thinking that, 2 series shouldn't be too much, but I did remember.
That half a European day, not half an any other region day. Those are very, very different measurements of time. But yes, Jarla did take the expected win once again there with the Warlock versus the Priest, and that is going to mean it all comes down to the final matchup, which is, I believe, Jarla's Warrior up against the Priest. And just having a quick look over at this Warrior list, it is, again, close to, like, New Age Warrior, I suppose, with a couple of the new cards. Kresh, Lord of Turtling, of course, included. The Ysera in there as well. There isn't Mutinous the Devourer, but the package of Ysera, Cthulhu, the South Sea Scoundrels, and the Silas Darkmoon combo with Soulbound Ashtongue is just a lot of late game Gia and about 50 different ways to win a game of Hearthstone. It's kind of crazy.
Maximum greed here, and it's got that double OTK that you're talking about. Well, Cthulhu being a partial OTK most of the time against Priest, but often gets there like with a couple more weapon swings or ticks of fatigue. But on top of that, he also has that Soulbound Ashtongue with the Silas Darkmoon, which you know, you can often stack a lot of armor against Priest, which, if it's not an immediate kill, also has just a very similar effect to Cthulhu, where you can get them to a low enough health total where a couple more weapon swings or ticks of fatigue can close out the game. And it's that redundancy that allows the warrior to be, you know, not as cautious with their hand space maybe as the priest would have to be, because if the priest is not running Cthulhu in the first place, like that's also one consideration to have. But Jarla also has that freedom of potentially surviving one Illusia turn, right? Because one of his combos can be used up and the other will still be intact.
Yeah, and I think this matchup is a lot kind of just as simple as the Warlock matchup, where instead of saying, oh, Bozzzton's going to have to like eat Ticketus to have much more of a chance in the matchup, Bozzzton's going to have to kill Jarla to have a chance. Because if this game goes late, Bozzzton is not running Cthulhu, he's not running any late game past Mutinous / Onyx Mage Scribe and any dragons he might make from studies, so there's no late game plan, there's no big payoff way to win. And as you mentioned, okay, he eats Silas with Mutinous, well, that's one win condition gone. What about the other 15 that are in the deck? So Bozzzton's going to have to get aggressive with this list and just go pretty much all out. But again, going aggressive against this warrior is going to be really, really tough, especially because when Priest goes aggressive, it's normally one big minion, which is what Warrior kind of excels at dealing with, you know, the likes of Bladestorm, even with like plus a couple of minions in Brawl, whereas it's not like that turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 high output damage that some of the other classes can do versus Control Warrior.
Yeah, I completely agree. Bozzzton also just not having Southeast Scoundrel in the list, which, you know, you don't expect to see if there's no N'Zoth. There's zero way for Bozzzton to win this in Fatigue, and so it is all about trying to seize that early board. And while you did talk about how it's difficult for Priest to do that against all these Shield Slams and other single target removal that Warrior has, it's not impossible, because Sethic Veilweaver can do magical things if you get it down and it doesn't immediately get removed. Draconic Studies into many Plague Proto-Drakes is also very effective, and the most important part I find is keeping the Raised Dead pool as narrow as possible to make sure that you only resurrect these types of high impact minions. Like any dragon you can get off of Draconic Studies, if you can repeatedly play that, often is way better on average than just another wand maker. And importantly, I think Bozzzton should just hold off on Ogremancer entirely, because that's one of the worst ways to dilute the Raised Dead pool.
Yeah, and there's just one, I guess, wild card combo I want to talk about in Jarla's list, and it is creeping into ladder decks as well. I can't remember whose original list it is, but just the inclusion of that Magtheridon in there is something that you just often can't do anything about if you get caught off guard with it, because it works in some games very similar to how Demon Hunter used to run it in Soul Demon Hunter, where sometimes they play out on 4 and then they just Bladestorm the 1/3s away the turn after. They have a 12/12 and you have nothing. And Priest against a single minion has limited ways to actually deal with it when it's got that kind of health, right? It's not like just going through this list. Bozzzton isn't running Shadow Word Death. He would need to get it from Renew, or, you know, get it from the Sethic generation somehow. And outside of that, there just isn't really a way to kill a 12/12, because it's not like Hysteria is going to get a good job done, right? So it's a bit of a tough one. It's just one thing that can happen to maybe speed up this matchup.
Yeah, I should hope so, because like you said, Jarla has 15 different win conditions, but some are not as slow as the others. Not all the win conditions are built equally. Because there is all that late game, though, there's no room to go for what we were seeing as the more traditional Control Warrior list, at least in APAC, with the Vol'jin in there to pull out early Rattlegore or Troublemakers. But this does seem like a more guaranteed way to get there in the long run. And for Jarla, I fully expect to see everything tossed away that isn't like combo pieces or Southsea Scoundrel or Outrider's Axe.
Well, there's 2 of them. Outrider's Axe and Southsea Scoundrel in the opening hand. Again, Scoundrel, just a card that the more I see play, the more I like as just a solid control style card, because it has the bonus effect of like increasing fatigue. It gives you the more options, even though you hand initiative over to your opponent. But in a lot of times, that's not even strictly true, because you've just played a 4-mana 5/5, which is a pretty decent amount of initiative if you ask me.
Yeah, it's oftentimes surprisingly difficult to remove on curve, and when you have that interplay of being the deck that runs Scoundrel against a deck that doesn't, you already create so many problems for the Priest, right? Because Bozzzton cannot stay higher than 8 cards at any point for fear of overdrawing. I guess it's not as crucial when he's not running Cthulhu, because he can just overdraw and still have that original game plan of trying to go for tempo, 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 because he knows he's not winning in Fatigue in the first place. But you're already seeing Draconic Studies played for Skeletal Dragon. That's a very good one to get for additional value, and one that Bozzzton would be pretty happy to repeatedly raise dead if that comes into the hand at any point in the near future.
Here though, Bozzzton getting off to a, I'll say slow-ish start. He does have a decent curve, but already playing Sethic into like nothing is kind of a little bit rough here. He has to expect this to live, which I guess is a reasonable expectation going in 23 mana from Jarla. So maybe this Apotheosis can open some things up for him.
Yeah, or even just curving into Mankrik. I think Bozzzton is just very much heavily leaning into the game plan of going for maximum tempo, and Sethic in the turn before Outriders Axe is available actually requires Shield Slam to deal with, which is not something Jarla wants to use on just a 2/3. So I think it's a good spot for Bozzzton, and he can go for that Apotheosis to play around Outriders Axe. I do think it's a little bit stronger than Mankrik here.
I must consider.
It's not as though Jarla has 0 ways of then killing the 4/6 Sethic, because he's running Coerce, he's running Bladestorm at the worst case scenario, but I just think it's too premium for Bozzzton to get immediate damage, remove the Outriders Axe out, and get 1 generation from the Sethic. It ticks too many boxes.
No, I completely agree, and it's just the fact that, well, what if it does live? Then you get to do even more next turn, right? Like, it's got potentially even more upside. It looks like Jarla's just going to have to play out his South Sea Scoundrel.
Well, I'm already ticking off Renew here because Bozzzton really wants to have that to play onto Sethic. Archdruid Naralax is a bit interesting because I feel like that's a bit of a low tempo play for Bozzzton, whereas for Jarla, I think he'd be relatively happy playing it next turn if the Outriders doesn't have a good target. And then the Zarela is just really tough for Jarla to use because he's not actually running healing effects.
Yep. Archdruid looks good to me here. It's just if Jarla agrees. There's like a weird world in which Jarla just lets him have Renew, but I don't think it's worthwhile.
I agree. It's just the question of whether Jarla thinks the main value of Scoundrel is just purely for fatigue, or if it's just potentially giving Jarla something additional to do. And if it's in the latter, I think Naralax is the obvious choice. Well, as it happens, Bozzzton picks up the Renew anyway. I'm not sure if it's the start to this turn, because I think priority number 1 is finding a way to deal with this Scoundrel that doesn't involve putting the Sethic into it. So trade into the 1/3, renew the Sethic, go fishing for Shadow Word Death, or if not that, then just ways to buff the Sethic even more. Ooh, or Studies.
We can coin out the Focus Will on... Oh, no, okay. I thought he was holding the coin there to go Focus Will.
Yeah, I would have continued the Sethic train, but I do think the coin is a bit valuable if he wants to go Drake next turn, and also the Focused can get better targets later on Crush or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jarla can kill this Sethic, but what if he just plays the second South Sea Scoundrel? He gets to burn a card, and also, like, kind of makes the Sethic worse for Bozzzton because he just won't have hand space a lot of the time.
Run for me.
That's true. I think it's completely fine here. So Apo being given onto a Sethic stuck on board seems kind of bad.
Raised Dead is the nuts, right? Jarla can just get another Scoundrel. And if he gives it to Bozzzton, again, Bozton's hand is full. Like, when does he get to Raise Dead and, like, have space, right? Yeah, I like this a lot.
I agree. I think it's very, very strong here.
Hand is too full.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, felt that one.
I don't think I'm going to participate in the tradition of Europe of making dead wife jokes. But
I've never made it.
the burned wife jokes?
That must have been subtle because I've never spoke about such things. The only thing I've ever said is Schrodinger's wife. Which is not like a bad joke. Anyway, moving swiftly on before I get in trouble. This is tough turn for Bozzzton, right? Like, what does he actually do here? This Archdruid feels way too slow, which is why it was a good pick from Jarla. Draconic Studies, like, what will he realistically draw to be good? Focus Will, if he does that on one of the... I guess he could Focus Will the 5-2 and it still be tradable.
I'd be inclined to start with palm reading there just to look for a card that actually gets rid of the other South Sea Scoundrel. But in the end, Bozzzton is just going for the Skeletal Drake, which is the most pressure right now. And he goes on 9 cards, so again, if it's against Raised Dead into another Scoundrel, then yes, he will overdraw, but it's not the strongest play for Jarla on board because it's not well trading into the 4-9 and the Sethic gets to stick around.
Yeah, weirdly enough, still might be the best play because he just doesn't have a way to kill this board anyway. Unless I'm being blind.
No, that is true.
Yeah, so he's just going to go for it. Bozzzton assuming he had removal, and he's like, oh no, he doesn't. He's just going to blood sail me again.
Build your own Ticketus, right? Yeah. 5 Scoundrels played? That's like Ticketus.
One for me, one for you.
Guess Blade Master? Oh, went for Soul Mirror, okay.
I do think the Blade Master is better for Bozzzton than it is for Jarla, because Jarla doesn't really have a way of buffing its attack, and it won't clear very much on Bozzzton's side of the board, whereas Bozzzton can have like Apotheosis or things generated from Sethic. Whereas the Soul Mirror is just symmetrical no matter who plays it.
Right.
It's too full.
Oh, that's a pretty good burn for Jarla there. Although not really the matchups you expect to want to burn Bulwark in when fatigue is involved, potentially, then it's never a bad one to have. So Jarla's going to be safe from that ooze.
Yeah, even more so than the Bulwark, I think it's the Outriders being safe.
Sure,
which is a big deal, because I can imagine like the one way Jarla might lose this is Bozzzton having that big tempo start and Jarla runs out of answers, but the Outriders very quickly can solve that problem. Another Soul Mirror for Bozzzton is the highest value option, although the Power Infusion can keep the Sethic train going. Flash Heal's also pretty good because mana constraints and allows him to take more value trades. That's a good one. Condemn. Mage Scribe. Value, value, value.
Second Onyxia go. Just makes waves of minions for the rest of the game.
Oh my gosh, he did it. So that means that Bozzzton needs to raise that before he plays these Onyxias, otherwise the raid stats are complete trash. Even silencing his own Sethic there. You've done your job, Sethic, says Bozzzton. Doesn't want to overdraw anymore. So this is a pretty good Outrider's turn for Jarla, I'd have to assume. He can also get the Scorpid down.
Yep, looks pretty solid, doesn't it? I was looking at Narrowlax, but then hand space gets a little bit tight again.
I mean, it also does with the Scorpid, right? Like, they both generate cards, but I kind of favor the Scorpid if only to challenge the Sethic.
Yeah, I also just think, like, with Narrowlax, you can get Ysera cards that you have no way of using. So then you get 2 over 2 turns, which both might end up stuck in your hand for a bit. Whereas Scorpid, if you feel that worried about hand space, you can just quite often pick a card that is very playable.
It's fair. And Jarla's just deliberately not drawing from the Outriders here, which I think is fine. He has more than enough resources to deal with most things that Bozzzton can put forth in the near future. In terms of outcomes from the Naralex, though, I think Jarla is really looking to get Dream and Awakens more so than any of the proactive minions, but at least he gets the better of the two with the Emerald Drake, which actually can challenge this 4-5.
Yeah, one thing that's important now is something that came up in testing quite a lot is people forgot to play around Silas and how to play, not how to play around Silas, but just forgot to do it. So I do just hope for Bozzdton's sake that just because Jarla might not necessarily go for the exact combo, right? He might just, if Bozzdton makes a great minion and puts it on the end of the board, Jarla might just be, yeah, okay, let's steal it. So it's just important to keep an eye on that Bozzdton just stays on top of that that position in there.
Yeah. Very true. So Jarla ends up on the body of Cthulhu here, which has been in hand for quite some time. Like, crucially, he had turns where this could have gotten Elucia. Oh, sorry. Never mind. This is the first turn where Bozzdton would have had mana to go Elucia and dump a Cthulhu piece. And so that's when Jarla is deciding to play out a Cthulhu part. And Jarla is on now 9 cards, still not overdrawing. No Fear of Scoundrel on the other side. And the 6/6 is actually pretty problematic for Bozzdton. If he wants, he can just go for a very aggressive Soul Mirror, which I'm actually leaning towards here because I do think Bozzdton has to be the pressure player in this matchup. Can fit in Wand Maker as well. Push another 6 damage. Beat it up into an Onyxia turn.
Yeah.
Wave becomes tempting to take some more value trades, but he can't get rid of the Scorpid by just doing that. Gets to fit in Raise Dead though.
Well, the Scorpids will kill each other, right? If he does so.
Well, I was talking about Wave of Apathy. If he does this, then the Scorpid stays alive a lot of the time.
Oh, sure.
For Rally for just Mancrick instead. Okay. Important thing is he stays at 9 cards, doesn't overdraw after having seen a bunch of Scoundrels already. The Soul Mirror that Jarla picked up is like not the cleanest because it would leave 3 1-health minions on Bozzdton's side of the board. He could then go Minefield if he really likes.
Right.
But those are premium removal tools, which, as it stands, Jarla doesn't actually have most of his natural good removal, right? The Bladestorms, the Brawls are not in hand.
Yeah, I think he'd do anything to swap that Emerald Drake for Bozzdton's Awakens right now. I think that's what he was really looking for from Naralex. But he got 2 Emerald Drakes, which is not really what he's after.
What now?
And he's a ways off from his own Ysera being able to have space in hand to actually generate him Awakens. So this is a really tricky turn for Jarla. Maybe it is just the Soul Mirror.
Or what if he just kills the 4/5 with the Scorpion and just plays 2 Drakes?
Sure. He's actively choosing to draw cards now because he's looking for Brawl and Bladestorm, you'd have to assume.
Nice. Because with this play, he knows Bozzdton has Soul Mirror. But if he Soul Mirrors this, fine. Like, no problem. These are just generated cards anyway. And it would be the majority of Bozzdton's turn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He could do.
They are just out of range of Awakens on its own, dealing with everything as well.
Consider.
I'm just looking at, like, Soul Mirror Laughing Sister, maybe? Wouldn't be a terrible turn. Just clear this board, push additional 5, put an additional awkward minion on there that's at a different health total.
Yeah, it is a very aggressive use of Soul Mirror that I've been advocating for several turns now. I'm just concerned for Bozzdton that the window for good Raise Deads is quickly closing because he's putting kind of garbage into the pool, but he just hasn't had the time to do it with the hand space and the fact that Jarla's been drawing him more cards with the South Sea Scoundrels. So this is just the most aggressive push, and for now it's pretty decent because Jarla only has the 1 Bladestorm in terms of, I guess, also the Soul Mirror in terms of removal right now. And if this board gets dealt with, Bozzdton just has Onyxia into Onyxia. Unfortunately, 1 health extra on board for this to just be a very clean swing into minefield turn.
I wonder.
Maybe that's just okay, though, and then you can just play Crash afterwards.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just a 3-1 that gets left on the board if he goes for minefield.
Right.
Like, I assume he swings first because he doesn't want to draw. Or does he want to draw? Like, Jarla has taken a turn where he deliberately didn't draw with Outriders, and then one where he deliberately did draw. It's just a question of whether he feels he needs more removal than what's in hand right now, which I think you can make the argument for. There's 2 generated dragons that he doesn't know about, so he's looking to probably get to Coerce and second Blade Storm sooner rather than later. So he's taking the card draw here. Blade Storm immediately procs his Crash.
Also, if there's a trade here, like Jarla he's nowhere near close to the Silas combo, but he's at least now finally made a bit of a start, right? Like, even if he gets hit for 3, he's on 5, he has the shield made in hand for additional 5, like, he is doing something towards that combo if he's interested in it at all for this game.
Little by little. And for Bozzzton, we do know that it's very difficult to maneuver Mutinous to get anything significant eaten guaranteed, but he can start to have an inkling of, okay, the pool of minions from Jarla is narrowed now, where there's a good chance you get one of those high-impact late-game cards like Ysera and Silas. It could also be that Bozzzton is holding the Mutinous altogether to possibly eat Cthulhu, but then it's a bit ambitious to hope that Cthulhu stays in hand the turn that it's drawn.
Right.
Because a lot of the time Jarla would just windmill slam that down. Okay, cashing in on the raised deads, gearing up for Onyxia next turn.
You don't pick the ones.
Yeah, and on that note, probably won't play Narrowlax because it just makes Onyxia a little bit worse. Once again, an awkwardly shaped board here for Bladestone.
Minefield as well. I don't think Jarla wants to shield slam any of these minions just to make sure that the minefield can snipe down the Laughing Sister. It's kind of expensive, right? The shield slam gets a lot better later on.
Yeah, what if you just Bladestorm Minefields, then play Shield Maiden?
Kind of expensive. It's really difficult to toe the line of how many resources he's really allowed to use here, but I do agree that leaving up 6 every turn doesn't feel like a good deal for Jarla, just to greed out a little bit more.
Well, it would also allow him to build up this armor, right? Because he does have the combo in hand, and you know, sometimes you don't need to get it to a full 30 or whatever, but he has a weapon that deals 10. And he does have the combo, so maybe just guarding your armor. Because if he takes 6 now, I don't think he's ever getting a significant amount of armor to make Silas combo a thing.
Yeah. Goes exactly for your play. And again, it doesn't have to be the Silas for all 1 kill in one fell swoop. Like, obviously that's ideal, but Jarla still has the Cthulhu in there where he can sometimes just cash in this damage and then try to get there at the end with Cthulhu a bit later on. Bozzzton is starting to smell like something is up though, so he rips the Mutinous and gets the Silas, and so that partial combo or partial OTK with the Soulbound Ashtown no longer available.
Yeah, long gone. And in case this is one of the first times you've seen Mutinous, the minion that it eats from hand is completely disappeared, negated, it doesn't exist. So it's not in any, you know, resurrect pool, it's not anything like that. So it's just completely gone from the game.
This does seem like it would merit a shield slam now from Jarla. He does have Coerce as one more way to deal with a singular big threat, and he'll be aware of 2 of them being possibly in Bozzzton's hand with the 2 Draconic Studies. And at worst, he has Ysera Dream available at any point onward. So I do kind of like the look of just shield slam, armor up, call it a day. Playing second Shield Maiden is a bit weak to Hysteria is my thinking.
Yeah, in a weird way as well. I was just looking at what Ysera bounce does, but yeah, I think this is a little bit better.
Oh, going for the Ysera now. So he has to play Nightmare to not overdraw. Okay, guess he's fine with it.
Yeah, I think with the Ysera now, it's just about him giving himself more things to do next turn, right? Because if you look at his hand, Soul Mirror, Bulwark, and now a pointless card, Ashtongue, then his draw off the top needs to be playable every single turn for the rest of the game. Whereas now he has, at worst, some minions to play out.
That's a good point. I mean, he does give up his Shield Maiden, but the partial damage pushed, I want to say, is not relevant right now. Maybe in many turns if the Cthulhu comes online sometimes, if Bozzzton hasn't had the time to, say, weave in the hero powers to recoup that damage. But the more important thing is getting the Ysera body on board and then Laughing Sister Emerald Drake to follow up.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right? The damage push with sticking Ysera means that you're going to be able to push more damage. So even if it doesn't sort of equal lethal, it will probably stop Bozzzton building a board big enough that Cthulhu can't kill.
I do think Bozzzton is right to go for the Onyxia here, though, even though there are... Wait. Oh. So he's deliberately not getting the 1/1s in order to keep his raised dead pool a bit narrower and also make Brawl worse for Jarla.
This seems strange.
It does seem strange, but he knows about Awakens, right? So the 1/1s were dead always at the minimum there.
But he knows about Dream as well. So then it gets bounced, and then he replays it with the 1/1s, and then he's weak to Brawl, and he awakens again. It's just the same thing, right?
True.
That's the only thing I was looking at. It's like, look, it's the same turn, except Jarla did more damage.
And Bozzzton's gonna overdraw.
Yeah.
Oof. Maybe the focus will was just to get one more card out of hand, but yeah, it's really not accomplishing all that much. Jarla is simply winning in terms of board and just weapon damage. And he can play his own Emerald Drake here. I would love to see Jarla just swing face and then, you know, swing again, re-equip Outrider's Axe and try to push lethal that way, but like, he doesn't need to waste the weapon charges, right? He's winning on both fronts, board and fatigue.
I mean, I think if he, as long as he isn't leaving tons of stuff on Bozzzton's side of the board, I think going face can be absolutely fine. He absolutely blitzes the fatigue because of his Bulwark anyway. So even if it gets to like a weird fatigue race, he'll just win because he's ahead and he has Bulwark of Azeroth. He's seen Apotheosis come out from Bozzzton. So, I don't know, I'll be all for the aggression. With the Ysera as well, he can use Awakens to just bully his way through a board to push more damage face too. Like, it all adds up to me. Now Bozzzton's in that same rough spot, right? Like, what does he do this turn? Because it's just the same turn as last turn, but worse.
Yeah, it's really rough. Just going digging in Jarla's hand because he just didn't have a good answer for this damage. He was kind of dying, and the race deads weren't playable because he had so little health to work with. But this is again another case of Elucia on the rope. Bozzzton little time to consider what cards to actually play here. He knows about Awakens minimum. And then he can go Awakens Coerce, I guess, to clear everything.
Gonna steal the shield here from Jarla so he can soak some damage. But again, like, 2 of those charges are instantly gone because there's just the minion and the weapon on board.
Very true. Jarla just has a lot of dumpable cards here. Like, he can waste the Sethic from Bozzzton. I think that's pretty high up on the priority list. He can waste the Mage Scribe, not play a spell after it.
Yeah, what if he just went like Sethic, Condemn, Mage Scribe this turn?
Seems strong. Or Mage Scribe Sister Sethic, just all the minions played. It does create hand space for Bozzzton to go raise dead, but again, he's on such a low health total that the raise deads are pretty precarious. And once the hands switch back, it's like still not the easiest proposition for Bozzzton to clear everything. Like, yes, he'll have Awakens, but then the Mage Scribe has 9 health, right?
I think I like the Condemn because that's his only reactive card in the hand, right? Like, that's his only way to interact with the board. Whereas Laughing Sister, although a good minion, if he just plays a Laughing Sister, Jarla can probably just ignore it at that point. Looks like he's going to go full minion, though.
Is there trouble?
Alright. So the Condemn can partially clear this for Bozzzton. It is just not enough at the moment. Jarla will be completely aware of that. Raise Dead. I mean, he can soak a charge of the Bulwark with Raise Dead. That's pretty funny. But there's not much in the pool that actually fishes him out of this hole where he's losing on board, right? He needed, like, the Jarla to not be burnt all those turns ago. In terms of what Insight can pull for Bozzzton, sorry, the deck tracker is bugged for me right now. Can't really see what's left.
There isn't a lot. I think I can say that for free. No, they're narrow.
Deliberately trying to go for Elucia again by killing it first before going Raise Dead.
You don't pick the ones.
My blade
Samuro into the 3-2 and then swing with the Bulwark clears everything but the Mage Scribe. Okay, he's just not going to swing at all, which is kind of weird because you generally just use that last swing of the Bulwark for the double value.
Yeah, because now, like, if the minion goes face, it dealt the durability and it's alive. Whereas that wouldn't be the case beforehand, of course.
And Jarla has so much knowledge of what's in Bozzzton's hand right now. There's just like a couple of generated cards, but the 2 Onyxias are what Jarla needs to be mainly worried about. And he has the check, right, with the Soul Mirror and the Ysera Awakens. So he's fine to just keep piling on pressure here.
Yeah, also as well, like, the weapon just takes the charge, right? Which means Bozzzton's just effectively taking more damage than he would need to take. By 1. By not swinging into the 3-1.
I guess he saved the Nitro for the Outriders action.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot of burst that Bozzzton will not be expecting.
I mean, that's just enough, easily enough damage to win the game. Because again, with Bozzzton's, the cards he has generated, mainly minions, we can see the spells aren't healing spells. Like, how does he even deal with this? Like, well, this palm reading's a good start, but it's going to have to be pretty incredible to have any chance.
Hysteria leaves a 3-1 in every outcome, but it's a start.
He could... Wait, could he do that differently here? No.
Like Focused Will, the trade.
Yeah, or like heal it or something. Like.
Yeah, I think that's as good a chance as any. It becomes a 4-7, so that then does become a full clear. How many Onyxias can you fit in a single hand?
Well, again, though, I think the first one just shouldn't have been, like, Focus Willed, because he would have forced Jarla to use AoE. Like, this Ysera Awakens just wouldn't be in Jarla's hand right now. Or Bozzzton would have had a board of 1-1s, right?
Maybe, yeah. Well, he finally gets the clear. Can play down the Circus Amalgam as well. I think it's a little bit better than Naralux at this point to just have a threat preloaded to maybe challenge one of the Ysera minions that Jarla could then play down. Bozzzton just needs a free turn to play Onyxia once in this entire game.
Okay, I am very ready for just Emerald, Outrider Axe, Nitro Boost. These are the turns I live for in control matchups.
When they become aggro matchups, I completely agree. It's like Arcanite Reaper reborn.
It's just a lot of damage, isn't it? And like I said, there's just no realistic way Bozzzton can even heal through this.
Nope. Yeah, there's no outs, even if he heals and raise deads. I guess if he gets Scorpid into like Renew, into Desperate Prayer, that type of crazy train of generation he can get from Priest, but probably just better to go for hide behind the taunt of Circus Amalgam by that point. Oh, but then he can't kill the 9/6, so it does have to be raised dead. Digging.
You have
Doesn't look like it to me, and the overall expected outcome based on how successful Jarla has been with this approach has happened. He takes the victory over Bozzzton. It was a very close series, a very hard-fought series from both sides, and a series that frankly lasted ages, as I think we easily crossed the 2-hour mark for this one. But there were moments there where I think Bozzzton just let a few things slip. I especially think in that matchup. I guess you always have to ask questions when Draconic Studies Dragons are in hand for the majority of the game, right, and don't ever really have an impact. Like, one thing you're trying to do is put big minions on board and push. But in general, I think the matchup was just super hard, especially with Bozzzton's build of Priest just not having that, well, I run Cthulhu too kind of approach, right? Of like there being some kind of big win condition for him. He's just running a much more slimmed down list of that Priest.
The Warrior and Warlock are definitely hard tech to make it as difficult as possible for Priest to get through. I think if there was